Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. Relationships don't have to feel like you're wrestling life to the ground every single day. They don't have to drain your peace, drain your joy, or drain your purpose. Effortless relationships are real, but they begin long before you ever meet another person. They start with you knowing who you are. Is the starting point for every healthy and effortless relationship, because you cannot offer what you haven't discovered and you cannot protect what you don't understand. Most people walk into relationships hoping someone else will fill the empty spaces within them, validate their worth, or define their identity. But effortless relationships come from two whole individuals choosing each other, not two incomplete people trying to fix each other. When you know who you are, you carry yourself with a confidence that doesn't need approval. And that confidence sets the tone for the kind of people you attract and the kind of love you allow into your life. Self-awareness gives you clarity. It helps you understand your values, the non-negotiables that guide your choices. When you know your values, you don't waste time entertaining people who don't align with your principles. You stop bending yourself out of shape to fit into someone else's life because you're already secure in your own. People who don't chase chaos, they recognize peace when they see it, and they choose relationships that add to their lives instead of ones that drain them. Knowing yourself also means understanding your emotional patterns. Everyone has triggers, habits, and coping mechanisms. Some people shut down when they're hurt, some lash out, some run away, and some pretend they're fine while silently breaking inside. When you're aware of how you react under pressure, you can communicate your needs honestly instead of expecting others to guess. You also become more compassionate because you're able to explain your emotional landscape rather than leaving people confused or feeling shut out. This eliminates unnecessary misunderstandings and creates a smoother, more effortless connection. Another aspect of knowing yourself is recognizing your strengths. Many people downplay their gifts because they're afraid of seeming arrogant or because past experiences made them doubt their abilities. But when you fully acknowledge your strengths, you stop settling for people who don't appreciate what you bring to the table. You start choosing relationships where your qualities are celebrated rather than tolerated. At the same time, knowing your weaknesses is equally important, not so you can judge yourself, but so you can grow. Self-awareness helps you identify the areas where you need patience, healing, or boundaries. When you know where you struggle, you can prevent those struggles from becoming constant sources of conflict in your relationships. People who understand who they are don't depend on relationships to create happiness. They share the happiness they already carry. They don't cling out of fear. They connect out of choice. They don't tolerate disrespect, confusion, or inconsistency because their identity is not tied to someone else's approval. They walk in truth, and that truth acts like a filter, removing the wrong connections and attracting the right ones. Effortless relationships become possible because the foundation is stable, the expectations are clear, and the connection is built on authenticity rather than insecurity or fear. Clear communication is one of the most powerful tools in creating effortless relationships because most problems don't come from people being wrong for each other, but from people not understanding each other. When communication is unclear, inconsistent, or incomplete, the relationship becomes a guessing game where emotions are misread, intentions are misunderstood, and assumptions take the place of truth. When two people cannot communicate openly, everything becomes heavier. Every disagreement becomes bigger than it needs to be. Every silence becomes suspicious, and every unmet need becomes a silent wound. But when communication honestly and respectfully, the relationship feels lighter, smoother, and more natural. Clear communication starts with vulnerability. Many people talk, but few truly share. They give hints instead of honesty, signals instead of sentences, and expect the other person to put the pieces together. But effortless relationships don't come from mind reading, they come from courage. It takes courage to say, "This hurt me," "This matters to me," or "This is what I need." When communication is rooted in vulnerability, the other person gets access to your real emotions instead of your defenses. This eliminates confusion and allows genuine understanding to grow. Communication is also about listening. Really listening, not waiting for your turn to talk. Many conflicts spiraled because both people are defending their feelings without hearing the feelings of the other. Effortless relationships require emotional presence. It means putting down the phone, silencing the noise, and giving someone the gift of your full attention. When people feel heard, they feel valued. And when they feel valued, they naturally give the same respect in return. Good listening builds emotional safety, and emotional safety makes communication natural instead of stressful. Another important part of clear communication is clarity in expectations. A lot of disappointment in relationships comes from unspoken standards. Someone expects quality time, but never says it. Someone wants reassurance, but hides it behind pride. Someone feels overwhelmed, but pretends to be fine to avoid conflict. When expectations are never expressed, the other person fails not because they don't care, but because they didn't know. Communicating expectations isn't demanding. It's informing. It allows people to show up correctly for each other without confusion or resentment. Tone is just as important as words. You can be right in what you're saying, but wrong in how you say it. Communication that feels like an attack creates defensiveness. Communication that feels like cooperation creates understanding. Speaking with kindness doesn't mean avoiding truth. It means delivering truth in a way that builds instead of breaks. When people feel safe during communication, honesty becomes easier, and honesty keeps the relationship free from secrets, silent anger, and emotional distance. Clear communication also means addressing problems when they are still small, not letting them pile up. When issues are ignored, resentments grow silently. But when communication is open, issues are resolved quickly, and the relationship doesn't collect emotional clutter. Effortless relationships don't avoid conflict, they handle conflict wisely and promptly. Ultimately, communication turns relationships from complicated puzzles into meaningful partnerships. It creates transparency, trust, harmony, and a steady emotional rhythm that makes love feel natural rather than stressful. Respect is the foundation of every effortless relationship because it shapes how people treat each other, speak to each other, and value each other. When respect is present, love grows peacefully. When respect is missing, love becomes difficult, painful, and unpredictable. Respect isn't just about avoiding insults or polite behavior. It's about recognizing the humanity, emotions, and worth of the other person. It means seeing them as equal, not someone to control, belittle, or take for granted. Respect creates emotional safety, and emotional safety is what allows relationships to flow with ease rather than tension. Whether respect is at the center, people communicate more thoughtfully. They choose their words with care, not because they're afraid of conflict, but because they don't want to cause unnecessary hurt. Respect makes you consider the impact of your actions, not just your intentions. It reminds you that your partner or friend has feelings, boundaries, dreams, and fears, all just as real as your own. This awareness encourages patience and empathy. Instead of reacting impulsively, you pause, you think, and you navigate challenges with a calmer spirit. That alone removes so much unnecessary friction from relationships. Respect also means honoring the differences between you and the other person. No two individuals will ever think the same, feel the same, or respond to life in identical ways. People who lack respect often try to force their partner into their own way of thinking, criticizing them for being different or expecting them to change to fit a mold. But effortless relationships embrace differences. Respect allows you to appreciate another person's individuality rather than seeing it as a problem to fix. You learn to say, you see it differently, and that's okay. This creates a space where both people can be themselves without fear of being judged. Another important part of respect is consistency. It's easy to be respectful when everything is good, but real respect shows up during disagreements. It means you don't use anger as an excuse to tear someone down. You don't call them names, bring up their past, or attack their insecurities. Instead, you argue with honor. You stay rooted in the belief that even in conflict, the other person deserves dignity. When people feel respected during hard moments, trust grows instead of breaking. Respect during conflict is what separates healthy relationships from destructive ones. Respect also shows up in how you support each other. When you respect someone, you want to see them win. You listen to their goals, encourage their growth, and celebrate their progress. You don't compete with them, diminish their accomplishments, or hold them back out of insecurity. Respect makes room for partnership instead of power struggles. It shifts the relationship from me versus you to together. Equally important is the respect you have for yourself. When you respect yourself, you don't tolerate mistreatment. You don't stay silent when something hurts you. And you don't shrink yourself to keep someone comfortable. Self-respect teaches how to treat you. It becomes the standard, the example, and the boundary. Without self-respect, relationships become unbalanced and draining because one person constantly gives while the other constantly takes. Respect brings stability. It makes relationships predictable in the best way. Not boring, but safe. You know the other person won't humiliate you, betray you, or use your vulnerability against you. You know they will show up with integrity, kindness, and accountability. That sense of security is what allows a relationship to feel effortless, because there is no need to second, guess intentions, or guard your heart with suspicion. Respect this kind of partnership where peace becomes the natural rhythm and love moves freely without fear. Boundaries are one of the most misunderstood parts of relationships, yet they are one of the most essential ingredients for creating effortless and peaceful connections. Many people hear the word boundaries and immediately think of walls, distance, or rejection. But boundaries are not about pushing people away. They are about teaching people how to treat you, showing them what you can accept, and protecting the parts of you that matter most. Boundaries are the instructions for loving you correctly, and without them, relationships become confusing, draining, and imbalanced. When you set boundaries, you create clarity. Everyone in your life knows what behaviors are acceptable and what behaviors cross the line. You establish what you will tolerate and what you will walk away from. This eliminates a huge amount of unnecessary conflict because people are not left guessing about your limits. It also gives you the inner security that comes from knowing you are honoring your own emotional needs. Without boundaries, resentment builds silently. People feel taken advantage of, misunderstood, or overwhelmed because they keep saying yes when their heart is screaming no. Boundaries free you from that emotional pressure. Healthy boundaries also aid respect between two people. When someone honors your limits, they show you that your feelings matter. They show you that they care about your well-being, not just their own desires. And when you respect someone else's boundaries, you create an environment where both individuals feel valued and safe. Respect becomes mutual, and mutual respect is what makes relationships feel effortless instead of exhausting. Boundaries form the structure that holds the relationship steady. Another powerful aspect of boundaries is that they prevent unhealthy patterns from forming. Without boundaries, relationships can slip into cycles of overgiving, codependency, or emotional imbalance. One person may end up doing all the work, carrying all the responsibility, or sacrificing their own happiness just to maintain peace. Boundaries interrupt those cycles. They keep you from losing yourself while trying to keep someone else close. They remind you that needs matter just as much as the needs of the other person. Boundaries also strengthen communication. When you express your limits clearly and calmly, you open the door for honest conversation. You learn to say things like, "I need time to process," or "I'm not comfortable with that," or "This is important to me." These statements are not confrontational, they are truthful, and truth builds trust. Boundaries remove the guesswork from relationships because everyone knows what the other person requires to feel respected, comfortable, and emotionally secure. Emotional boundaries are just as important as physical ones. You are not responsible for carrying the emotional burdens that someone else refuses to handle themselves. You are not obligated to fix, rescue, or constantly sacrifice your own peace to soothe another person's storms. Setting emotional boundaries allows you to support someone without drowning in their struggles. It creates balance instead of one-sided emotional labor. Finally, boundaries protect your peace. And peace is the soil where effortless relationships grow. When you protect your time, your energy, and your heart, you create space for healthy connection. You are no longer drained, overwhelmed, or stretched thin. You enter relationships whole, steady, and confident. With boundaries, love no longer feels like a battle. It becomes a choice, clear, intentional, and grounded in mutual respect. Boundaries don't make relationships harder. They make them easier, healthier, and more fulfilling for everyone involved. Choosing people who choose you back is one of the most transformative decisions you can make in your personal life, because the quality of your relationships depends heavily on mutual effort, mutual interest, and mutual emotional investment. When you constantly pursue people who don't return your energy, you end up exhausted, insecure, and questioning your own worth. But when you invest in who value you genuinely, relationships become lighter, smoother, and naturally more effortless. You no longer need to chase, convince, or beg for the bare minimum. Instead, you receive consistency, respect, and emotional presence without having to fight for it. Many people get stuck in one-sided relationships because they confuse desire with compatibility or chemistry with commitment. They believe that if they care enough, give enough, or try hard enough, the other person will eventually recognize their worth. But choosing someone who doesn't choose you back is like pouring water into a bucket full of holes. No matter how much you give, it will never be enough to make the relationship whole. Effortless relationships are built on mutual pursuit, where both people naturally meet each other halfway without force or pressure. Choosing people who choose you back means paying attention to actions instead of promises. Anyone can say they care. Anyone can talk about what they want to be someday. But true compatibility is shown in how people show up right now. Someone who chooses you will prioritize communication, make time for you, respect your boundaries, and put effort into maintaining the connection. Their behavior will align with their words. You won't have to decode mixed signals or justify emotional neglect. When someone chooses you, the relationship feels steady rather than certain. Another important aspect of choosing people who choose you is understanding that attention is not the same as commitment. Some people offer temporary affection, sporadic interest, or convenience-based connection, but that does not mean they are choosing you. Real choice is consistent, dependable, and rooted in intention. It shows up not only in good moments, but also in difficult ones. When challenges arise, someone who truly chooses you doesn't disappear, shut down, or withdraw emotionally. They stay engaged, communicate openly, and work through issues with you rather than leaving you to figure everything out alone. Choosing the right people also requires self-awareness and respect. You must believe that you deserve reciprocity, not imbalance. You must understand that settling for half love, half effort, or half commitment limits your emotional growth. When you know your worth, you naturally gravitate toward people who value it too. You begin to recognize red flags faster. Not because you're fearful, but because you're no longer willing to gamble with your peace. You learn to walk away from relationships where you feel anxious, unseen, or unappreciated. Not out of bitterness, but out of self-preservation. When you choose people who choose you back, relationships become harmonious. There is no need for manipulation, mind games, or emotional chasing. Instead of trying to prove your value, you simply share it. You don't have to shrink yourself to be accepted or overextend yourself to be loved. The connection becomes a partnership where each person contributes to the relationship's growth. Emotional needs are met without complaint. Love flows in both directions, and the relationship becomes a place of comfort rather than confusion. Ultimately, choosing people who choose you back is an act of emotional maturity. It is recognizing that healthy love is mutual, steady, and supportive. When both people are equally invested, love becomes effortless. Not because there is no work involved, but because the work is shared, meaningful, and rooted in genuine care. Effortless relationships do not mean relationships without effort. They mean relationships where the effort feels natural, shared, and rooted in genuine connection rather than stress or struggle. Many people misunderstand the idea of effortless love and expect it to happen magically without communication, growth, or intentional action. But real effortless relationships are built on a foundation of early effort. Effort in understanding yourself, effort in choosing wisely, effort in communicating clearly, and effort in showing up consistently. Once that foundation is strong, the relationship becomes easier to maintain because it rests on honesty, respect, and mutual support, not constant conflict or confusion. When both people are willing to invest in the relationship from the beginning, everything flows more smoothly. You don't waste energy fighting for basic needs to be met or competing to be understood. Instead, you create habits that make love natural. This includes checking in with each other emotionally, being open about your feelings, and addressing small issues before they grow into major problems. When you handle these things early, they never reach a point where they overwhelm the relationship. What seems effortless is really the result of consistent, thoughtful effort applied at the right moments. Effortless